It is my great pleasure to introduce my colleagues from Campus Life and the college. Today we have with us once again Patricia Potvin, who is the Vice President of Campus Life and Associate Professor of Pediatrics. We also have Ethan Pollock, who is the Dean of the college and the Abbott Gleason University Professor of History and a Professor of Slavic Studies. Gilda Mosaday is with us today. She is Deputy Dean of the College for Academic Advising. Timothy Shiner is our Senior Associate Dean of the College for Advising. And finally, we have Desiree Mix, who is the Associate Director of Student Accessibility Services. So let's get started. At this time, I will turn it over to VP Potebian. Pat?
Thank you so much, Mikkel. And good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to begin by thanking so many of you for staying engaged, by joining Tuesday's webinar, completing the exit survey, and submitting thoughtful questions for today's session. Your questions have helped shape this conversation, and we're grateful for your partnership. Today's discussion really focuses on academics. Earlier this week, we focused on security and the emotional experience of returning to campus. Today, we're turning to questions families are understandably asking about academic expectations and decision-making after the tragic shooting on December 13th. Before we do that, I want to briefly return to a question many of you raised during our last webinar. What will campus actually look and feel like when students return? Particularly at a time when nationally, many of us are seeing images of heavily armed or highly visible security forces in public spaces. I've been on campus since the tragedy on December 13th, as have all of the panelists who've spoken with you today, who will be speaking with you today and who spoke with you earlier. And I want to share a bit of what I've experienced. In the days after the shooting, the campus felt hushed and apprehensive, marked by the visible presence that comes with an active crime scene. After the shooter was captured, there was a sense of relief, even as we continue to mourn those we lost. Since staff returned in early January, there has been a gradual return of energy and movement. That transition has been emotional for many people, and I expect it to be for many students as well. At the same time, most of the students we've already seen back on campus have been genuinely happy to be together again, reconnecting with friends, places, and familiar routines. In many ways, Brown still feels like Brown. And there have been substantive changes. Students will notice an increased security presence on campus. There are more security personnel on foot and in vehicles, including additional unmarked police cars. This presence is intentional and focused on security and support. Our officers and security staff are trained to be visible, approachable, and supportive, and students should feel comfortable seeking them out if they feel unsafe or notice something concerning. Staff who are trained in trauma-informed counseling will also be visible and present throughout campus to support students upon their return. The memorials at the Van Wickle Gates and at Barris and Holly remain in place. For some students, encountering these spaces may be emotional. We believe that remembering Ella and Mohammed and the students who were injured is an important part of healing, and that these visible reminders offer reassurance that their lives and what our community endured will not be forgotten as we move forward together. I share this because the physical environment shapes how students experience their return and how ready they are to re-engage academically. For those who may not know me, my name is Pat Potvin. I'm the Vice President for Campus Life. I'm also a pediatrician, a Brown alumna, and a parent of a college student. I understand the balance families are holding, wanting students to be challenged and engaged while also cared for as whole people. As you probably all know, grief does not follow a timeline. At the same time, structure, purpose, and connection can be grounding. For many students, returning to the classroom and having thoughtful options within that structure is a part of recovery. Today's conversation will walk through academic policies and options students may consider early in the semester, the role of advising and proactive communication, and how Brown works to maintain consistency while responding to individual needs. Students' experiences will vary, we know that, and our systems are designed to meet them where they are. As Mikkel mentioned, we won't be able to answer every question today, but this is part of an ongoing commitment to stay connected with you, and we will follow up with a frequently asked question sheet in the next week. My hope is that you leave here today feeling clearer about academic expectations, more confident in the support available, and reassured that at Brown, academic rigor and holistic care go hand in hand. With that, I'm going to ask today's panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about their work and their connection to Brown. I'll start off with, are you going to call on people, Mikkel, or can I?
Uh, Go ahead, Pat.
Okay. Um, Ethan, maybe you can get us started?
Hi, yeah, thank you. Thanks, Pat. I'm Ethan Pollock. I'm Dean of the college, and I'm a professor of history and of Slavic studies. And I work with Pat and with the provost, the dean of the faculty, and the registrar, and all sorts of other units on campus to oversee the academic affairs of all of our undergraduate students. And it's a real pleasure to be able to speak with you today. Thank you.
Gilda?
Good afternoon. My name is Gilda Mosaday. I serve as Deputy Dean of the College for Academic Advising. In that role, I oversee our various academic advising teams. I oversee our academic code and I chair the Committee on Academic Standing. Thank you so much for having me on the panel.
Thank you for being here. Tim?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tim Shiner. I'm Senior Associate Dean of the College for Advising, so I work closely with Deans Mosaday and Pollock, and also coordinate closely with many of our colleagues in Campus Life. A lot of my role is helping individual students to navigate unique and individualized challenges they may be facing to help them on their pathways towards degree completion, and coordinating that network of support for each individual student's needs. So I look forward to sharing a little bit more about that with all of you today.
Thanks so much, Tim. And Des?
My name is Desiree Mix. I am the Associate Director at Student Accessibility Services. We work with students who have a variety of disability and related needs. I've been in Brown a little over 8 years, in this industry for a little over 15. I collaborate regularly with the folks that are on this panel, as well as other student support offices that are throughout Campus Life and beyond. We work with students in a variety of academic accommodations and housing accommodations or parking or transportation. There's a wide range of support that SAS provides and works with students for. So thank you for having me today, and excited to see how this goes.
Thank you so much, Des, and thank you all for being here. So we're going to just start off with some questions that were submitted by our parents and families, and I'll call on each of you to answer or to address those questions. But please, if you have anything additional to add, or if it would help to have two people sort of contribute to an answer, please feel free to unmute and share. My first question is for Dean Pollock. As I mentioned earlier, the physical environment impacts how well students are able to engage academically. At our last webinar, Brown's Chief of Police, Hugh Clements, shared that the spaces in Barris and Holly where the shooting occurred are being taken offline and walled off and will not be used for classes. Can you share how Brown is adjusting and what this will mean for students?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And that's a great question. And that's right. The involved classrooms have all been taken offline for the spring semester, which means that any class that had been located in those rooms or planned to be in those rooms in the spring had to be relocated to other classrooms on campus, which has now been done by our registrar and managed to be done without having to move the times of classes, which is really important. So the schedule that students had anticipated they should be able to keep. But this also does mean that some of the spaces we're using had been used for other things like student organizations or events, rehearsals, and some of those may be impacted because now we'll have classes in some of those spaces a little bit more often than we would in a normal semester. But basically what we're doing is asking the community to be patient and understanding as we get used to sharing and adjust to the spaces. And the bottom line is that the safety of our community is the first priority, and then continuity of instruction for our students. And we're able to maintain that. And we're we're happy that we are able to do
Thank you, Ethan. My next question is also for you. You're going to be on the hot seat a little bit today.
that. Okay.
We named this webinar Academic Support and Flexibility. So let's talk about what that means. What will academic flexibility look like this semester, and how will students be informed about their options?
Yeah, this is great. Flexibility at Brown is a core principle all the time, and it's built into our open curriculum. We really want our students to have the flexibility to shop classes, take classes, and really be, as we say, architects of their own education. So students have a lot of options at Brown to shape their own path and create their own academic goals. So what we want them and hope they'll lean on is some of the things that we have in place already, like the option of taking any class you choose, SNC, we call it here, satisfactory no credit. We don't like to think of it as pass fail, it's just no credit. But that takes some of the pressure off of a class to worry when some students are clearly worried about grades. We have a very generous add and drop flexibility. They can drop courses up until the last day of the semester. We have a lot of tutoring, writing support. I'm sure a lot of other supports will come up in the course of this conversation, but there's really a lot of structure in place to allow students to shape what they need to do. And particularly this semester, that's going to become really important. We're getting the word out to students about these things and making sure that they know what's available through their advisors, their primary advisors, that's exploratory advisors, the concentration advisors, but also academic deans are available every day for advising conversations. So students can always reach out. If they don't know where else to reach, they can always reach out to the college to get support on all of their academic decisions.
I think that's very helpful. There is a lot of flexibility at Brown when I share with other individuals who went to different institutions or who maybe work at different institutions of higher learning. I think they're always surprised by our SNC policy, although it's been around forever. When I was a student here, I was in the program of liberal medical education, and I was a concentrator in French literature. And I really struggled with biochemistry, and it was one of the requirements, and I had to get it done for the PLME program. So I quickly I changed that to SNC, and it was like the best decision I made of my life in college. And I could not agree more that that inherent flexibility at Brown really helps students to engage in the material without necessarily having that pressure of a grade hanging over your head. And in this moment, I'm hopeful that students really lean into that.
Yeah, I agree. And they can think about the balance that makes most sense for them now and use all of these tools in combination with one another, along with the courses they select to just sort of figure out a semester that meets their learning goals, but also makes sense for them where they are at this moment.
Absolutely. This next question is also for you. Many families hear that this flexibility that we're talking about generally depends on individual professors. Given the extraordinary circumstances of this year, are faculty receiving clearer guidance to ensure a consistent baseline of flexibility across courses?
Yes, faculty have been asked to be as flexible as possible within the course pedagogy that they have. I speak as a faculty member a little bit in this answer. Every course is a little bit different. All the things you're trying to achieve in a different course might be different, but it's clear, and it's probably important to remember that the faculty are part of this community that have been so deeply impacted as well. And I think that leads to tremendous empathy about what it is that our whole community is going through. And therefore, the idea that flexibility might be required, I think, comes pretty naturally to most of our faculty. But we've also reached out to them with webinars and in guidance to support with guidance on how they can best support students, how they can set the right tone in the classroom from day one, and emphasizing what it means to create a healthy learning environment for their students, given the challenges that our whole community is facing. So that's really been good. They've also, frankly, been encouraged to refer students to the academic deans and to campus life. There are times when faculty aren't the right person necessarily to help a student figure out some of the challenges they're facing, and the faculty need to recognize that, hey, we should send them on to the academic deans and to campus life. I think that's really important. The faculty understand that. And then if flexibility isn't working, a student themselves can contact us and reach out to us. And then, of course, I should add that students with disability can also contact student accessibility services and explore any disability-related accommodations they might need. So there's a range of ways in which students can lean in, and the faculty are fully prepared and have been trained and communicate. We've communicated with them that we expect flexibility this semester, and I think most of them recognize that's, of course, required.
Thanks so much, Ethan. All right, I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to talk to some of the other experts on the panel. Gilda, this question is for you. Families are concerned about how this year's disruptions may appear on the academic records of their students. Will transcripts reflect the context of the campus tragedy?
Yes, they will. So any students who may have chosen the satisfactory no credit option for a fall 2025 course will see a transcript notation that will essentially say that the decision was made due to extenuating circumstances.
And looking ahead, some families are also asking whether students who need physical or emotional distance from campus have academic options that reduce in person requirements. Can you speak to this request?
Sure. So Brown traditionally does have remote or hybrid courses. Students and families can review that information via Courses at Brown, and they just need to change the drop-down menu. I believe it's called Mode of Instruction. And so there's the option there to look for remote courses or hybrid courses. We strongly encourage students who are considering remote study to reach out to the college. We'll be holding, as Dean Pollock said, daily advising hours to talk to students about the specifics of what courses they're interested in and how that would work if they wanted to be remote.
And speaking of courses at Brown, some families have asked if classroom assignments will be publicly available this semester.
No, they're not. So classroom assignments, whether that's on Courses at Brown or whether that's on the registrar's website, do require a Brown University login to access.
That's really helpful to know. And thinking a little bit more about the flexibility question, families are seeking some reassurance that grading flexibility will be available as students return. Will students be able to declare courses satisfactory, no credit, or SNC this semester?
Absolutely. So at Brown, you can take any of our courses, S&C, which is wonderful. So even if a course is required for your concentration, which is what we call our majors, here at Brown, you can take that S&C and it will fulfill the requirement. So there's flexibility there. We always encourage students to utilize the shopping period to really get a feel for the course. They will have an opportunity to then be in the course for a few weeks. So the deadline to switch their grade mode option isn't until February 18th at 5 o'clock. So at that point, the student really has had an opportunity to hopefully have an assessment, a graded assignment, talk to the faculty member about their performance, and make an informed decision as to whether they want to take a letter grade or S&C.
Can you share a little bit about the shopping period? I think at other universities that we don't, everything is a little bit special at Brown, and so we call this period of exploration shopping. So there might be some parents on the call who are a little bit unfamiliar with that. If you wouldn't mind just giving them some basic info.
Yes, I definitely use some Brown lingo there. So at other institutions, it's commonly referred to as the add drop period. So students can very fluidly go to different classes, sit in on lectures, meet with the faculty member. Certainly, they're advised to review the course syllabus and look at the Canvas page. So at the beginning of the semester, students will have access to Canvas pages, whether or not they're formally registered for the course, which is really nice. And then they can decide, again, making an informed decision as to whether or not they want to stay in the course for the semester.
That's really helpful. And of course, what the goal is that after the students really spend time engaging in the coursework in that way, they'll be really informed so that by the time we get to February 18th, which is the deadline for changing a course to SNC, they'll have enough information to really make that decision.
Absolutely.
Um, Tim, I have a question for you. So families are asking whether there are low pressure ways for students to stay intellectually engaged without taking on full course demands. Are options like auditing available?
Yes, thanks, Pat. Students can definitely audit courses with faculty approval, and I think going back to what Ethan was sharing earlier, with faculty being asked to be particularly flexible this semester, we expect that to interact with that faculty approval. So any student can request a course to be taken for audit. An audit is a course for which a student technically registers, and it is on their transcript, but they don't earn credit for the course and generally aren't expected to do any of the assignments or exams related to the course. So a student might, if they are just, there's a course they're really, really interested in, but they don't need it for their concentration. It's just something they've always wanted to take, and they're wanting a lighter course load this semester while still being engaged academically. They might choose to pursue that audit option. So it would show up on their transcript. It would show up as an audit rather than S or S&C or for a grade. It would show audit. So it shows that they engaged in the course, but they don't actually turn in the assignments or receive a grade or credit for at the end of the semester. So it's definitely a great lower stress way to explore topics. And any student who has questions about what that means or how it impacts their academic standing, or their overall degree completion planning, should speak with an academic dean in the college, and also just check in with their course instructor about that option.
Thanks, Tim. I have another question for you, if you wouldn't mind. Families are hearing that some students may need to take a lighter academic load. What options exist if a student can't manage 4 courses this semester?
Yeah, this is a great question. And there are sort of two pathways. So people may know that to graduate from Brown, a student needs to earn a minimum of 30 course credits, and that 4 course credits is what we consider a normal course load, and most students are enrolled for 8 semesters. So if you took 4 courses every semester for 8 semesters, you would earn 32, and you only need 30 to graduate. So every student at Brown has this built-in flexibility to have 1 or 2 semesters where they only take 3 course credits. They don't need special permission, and they will still be on track to finish their degree on time, all other things considered. Even if a student is a little bit behind, they could take a summer or a winter course at another point in time and sort of build that cushion back up if they needed to. So that's sort of pathway one. Pathway two is a more formal approval for what we call a course load reduction. So if a student maybe already is a little bit behind academically, or they're feeling like maybe they might need multiple semesters where they take fewer than 4 courses, and they might spread out their time at Brown over a little longer, or if they're thinking they might need to take even fewer than 3 courses, so dropping down to 2 courses, they can connect with an academic dean to explore a formal, what we call course load reduction. And this is a formal acknowledgement with approval from an academic dean or a student support services dean that they're sort of approved to take a fewer number of courses. And when we evaluate their sort of academic progress at the end of each semester, that adjustment is made. It doesn't change the degree requirements, but it acknowledges what's going on, and then they work with a dean to have that impact on their longer term degree completion plan as part of the decision making process. So we know how it's impacting them, and they can make a really informed decision, and then we support them. Course load reductions can also be done for students who are registered with Student Accessibility Services if the reason behind it is related to a student's documented disability. And the deadline to request a course load reduction is normally a little bit earlier, but we're extending it this semester to February 24th. It does need to be processed by then, so we'd encourage students to reach out to us at least a few days in advance of that deadline, so we make sure we have a chance to have all those great advising conversations with them. There are also a few implications for students if they are on a F1 or J1 visa. If they are a student athlete, there might be eligibility considerations, and students on financial aid, there might be minor impacts to their financial aid. So that's why those few days for us to engage and connect with those campus partners so a student can make a really well-informed decision are really important. So even if a student's just curious about the option, they can reach out to an academic dean and we can talk through the whole thing as it relates to their unique and individualized circumstances and academic pathways.
Thank you so much, Tim. And I want to sort of highlight some of the information that you're sharing, but I think most importantly, the approach. I think if all else fails, encouraging students to speak to their academic dean and to speak to individuals who are advising them really about all of the options is so key. Tim, I'm sure that you can add to this experience, but what I often find is that students feel like they have to have the answers before they reach out, which is exactly the opposite of what we want them to do. We want them to reach out anytime they're considering something or they might be struggling, so they really can take advantage of the full breadth of what we have to offer. And oftentimes the students don't even know all of the different options for them. So really reaching out to someone in your office is going to be so critically important to help guide the decisions that they're making.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree. I always tell students, if you don't know where to go, but you have a question, just go to someone who's called Dean, and they will get you where you need to go, even if they're not the expert. And I see that Mikkel just dropped the link in the chat for everyone. We have Dean's open hours from 10 to 4 every weekday, beginning the day that classes begin. So there's a dean who's sort of available during that time every single day for these brief appointments, and then, can follow up as needed if longer conversations are needed. But it really is, all about just exploring options and then supporting what is the right pathway forward for that specific student.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Tim. Gilda, I'm going to turn back to you. Families are wondering whether independent study could be a more flexible academic option for some students this semester. Can you talk about what independent study is and will that be available?
Sure. So departmental independent studies are an excellent opportunity for a student to work directly and closely with a faculty member who's a subject matter expert in something that the student may be interested in exploring or really diving in deep. So they would essentially work with the academic department to find a faculty sponsor. That faculty sponsor would then meet with the student throughout the semester. It's a little bit more flexible in their structure and the approach and pacing. And so the faculty member and the student would work together to essentially come up with that schedule. The learning outcomes would still be very much defined like a traditional class, but it would allow the student that flexibility. It would allow the student to get to know a professor more personally, which is wonderful. And the student would need to register that independent study this spring by February 3rd. So, in knowing that there's not much time there, I would strongly, again, encourage students to reach out to the college. Even though our daily advising hours aren't starting until the 21st when classes start, we are here, we are actively ready and waiting to assist students. So let us know and we will help you explore that independent study option.
Thank you. And families are also asking what happens if a student realizes, even after the semester begins, that they may need to make academic adjustments or even take a leave of absence. We know as students are coming back to campus and processing the events of December 13th, they may have reactions that are a little bit unpredictable and maybe even unexpected for them. So, what options exist if they begin to realize this during the course of their study in the semester?
So many options. So even before the tragic events of December 13th, we would say in the college to students and families, there's no one way to earning a degree at Brown. We will work with the student, create an individualized pathway, understanding that inevitably things happen in an individual's personal or medical or any life event could happen where a student would need some flexibility. So You've already heard that students can take any of their courses S&C. You've heard about the course load reduction option. So certainly if a student has never taken less than 4 courses, this would maybe be a good semester for them to take 3 credits. Brown is also really flexible with our drop deadline. So unlike many of our other peer institutions, you can be in a course at Brown up until the very last day of the semester. So the last day of the spring semester would be May 5th. So May 5th, 5 o'clock, that's the deadline for a student to officially drop a course. Now, if a student forgets to drop the course by that deadline and they happen to get a no credit or an NC, the good news is that that will not appear on the student's official transcript. So that does happen from time to time, no fear. That won't appear on the official transcript, nor will a drop notation. So that's good. And students are encouraged to drop early because I think, if you're in 4 courses and you're maybe thinking that that one course is not going well or consuming so much of your time, it is sometimes better to just drop the course so that you can reallocate your time and energy to the courses that you do stay in. That is an advising conversation that we have often and repeatedly. So I think as soon as the student starts to get a sense that maybe they want to drop a course, they should reach out to their advisor or an advising dean in the college to start to have that conversation. There are financial obligations and tuition reimbursement implications to these decisions. So particularly if a student were to consider a leave of absence, we would work with them on a case-by-case basis with that request and reviewing the circumstances. And again, and helping serve as a liaison between them and financial aid or other campus resources on at the university to determine what their options are and what's in their best interest.
Thanks so much, Gilda. Tim, if students do need to slow down this semester and families are concerned it might impact their long-term academic process, could summer session help students stay on track?
Absolutely, and this relates to a couple of questions that I just saw popping up in the Q&A as well. Brown offers both summer and winter courses because they're condensed in sort of a shorter period of time. There are limits as to the number of courses a student can take in a single summer or winter. So in summer, they can take up to 2 courses. Our summer session runs from June 15th to July 31st. So it's about a 6-week time period. And there are courses in really all sorts of different disciplines across the Brown curriculum. And there's a much higher percentage of online and remote accessible courses offered in the summer. So a student wouldn't even need to be in Providence to take advantage of that. I also will mention, again, each student's situation is unique, but financial aid is available for summer courses for students who are on financial aid. So that's an important thing for people to know. And again, as with all of these things, any student who has questions about summer engagement or summer session can certainly reach out and speak with an academic dean about those options. But depending on where they're at in their overall Brown trajectory, if a student's currently entering, their even up to their 6th semester, they have this summer and next winter at least. And, for students who are earlier in their time at Brown, they have multiple summers and winters. So there's a lot of space down the line for them to make any necessary adjustments if they choose this semester, which we want to empower them to do to prioritize, balance and well-being. We always want that, not just in this moment, but especially in this moment.
Thank you, Tim. Gilda, I'm going to go back to you with a question about some of our structured academic pathways, thinking about pre-med or pre-law as examples. There's some real parent concern that flexibility in those particular types of pathways could affect long-term plans. Can you share a little bit about how Brown is going to support those students?
Sure. So Brown has a robust advising structure around pre-law and pre-health advising. So in addition to staff, which are deans who can have one-on-one appointments with students and discuss their individual, desires to go to graduate or professional school. We also have peer advising. So these are upper class students who are also pre-law, pre-med, who can meet with students and really give them kind of like the inside scoop on what the experience is like and how to navigate some of those decisions. We realize that there are specific requirements for going to medical school, for example, where some prerequisite courses are preferred to be taken in the fall and the spring or for a letter grade. And so we have reached out to students to let them know some of the specifics and what our advice is. But again, really encourage the students to come in and have an advising conversation so that we can be sure to give them specific advice about their goals and the institutions that they're possibly thinking of applying to after their undergraduate career comes to an end. So I think the message would be to reach out early and often. We understand that decisions are sometimes on a rolling basis, and so we can help support students as they learn more about what their objectives are.
Thanks so much, Gilda. Tim, I'm going to turn back to you. Uh, just looking at the questions, not only in the chat, but that were submitted ahead of time, families are really trying to understand what academic support is available if students struggle with coursework this semester. Can you share a little bit about what options exist here at Brown for those students?
Absolutely. There are a few different options, and I probably am not going to hit everything, but I'm going to talk about 4 or 5 of our larger consistent options. So one of which is that we do have free peer-led tutoring for a number of courses each semester. So it's a set number of courses. The tutoring is small groups, so it might be one tutor with 2 or 3 students. And it's sort of driven by the need. So towards the end of shopping period, as students are settled into their courses, there's an online form on the tutoring website, which I'm sure Mikkel's going to post in the chat in a moment, that students can indicate their interest in tutoring for a specific course. And a lot of these are sort of foundational or required courses in STEM. A lot of the language courses have tutoring. So it is a defined number of courses, but a student just indicates their interest, and then they'll take the total interest, identify the tutors they need, and within a week or so after the shopping period, students are assigned to those groups, which then meet weekly. Many courses, of course, have TAs and their own study review sessions or conferences where students can get that extra support. And then we also have our writing center, which works with any Brown community member at any stage of a writing process. So if a student is having trouble conceptualizing a written assignment, they don't know where to start, they don't know how to form their ideas or make an outline, they can help at that stage. Or if a student does all of that, but then they're really worried about polishing it up and checking their grammar and sentence flow and such, those options, they help with that as well. So any stage of the process, and students just schedule an appointment directly on the Writing Center website. We also have a Math Resource Center, which is more of a drop-in where there are experts there during the drop-in hours, and students just come with their problems, work together, work with the experts on site, and are able to help with any math-related things. And obviously math is something that then falls into a lot of other disciplines. So, even if you're taking a statistics course or something like that, you can utilize the Math Resource Center. And finally, we have within our Curricular Resource Center a program called Academic Coaching, Engagement, and Support, or ACCESS for short. And this is a program that is less about the subject matter and more about the organization of time, study habits, that sort of thing. So a student can request a peer, near peer academic coach who has a bunch of training, who will sit down with them, go through their syllabi, map out everything they need to do for the semester, help them backdate and figure out when they need to start those things, talk about their approach to studying and what's going to be most effective with different subject matters, and really do that more for lack of a better term, I guess, soft skill academic work as opposed to the like subject matter or discipline specific knowledge. And that can be tremendously helpful to students. So again, online form to request an academic coach on the Curricular Resource Center's website.
Thank you so much, Tim. It sounds like, not surprisingly, the resources are really robust to help students succeed. Des, my next question is for you, and I know there's actually a lot of information that we're going to share in the answering of this question. So I thank you in advance. Parents are also wondering about accessibility and how accessibility and disability related needs are going to be addressed alongside the support that is already available to students. Can you share a little bit about the approach of your office and maybe even some of the items that we offer students who require additional accommodations?
Of course. So students can access a range of disability-related supports that are designed really to help them participate not only in their academics, but their Brown journey here. Rather than relying on like a menu or a fixed list of accommodations, we really do focus on understanding each student's individual needs. So for the coming semester, students are encouraged to connect with us and discuss any disability barriers that they may be encountering already. Requests are reviewed through an interactive, individualized process that really focuses on how the disability impacts their access. And needs change throughout your entire time here at Brown, even within the semester. And the process is ongoing and flexible. Students can reach out to us at any point during the semester if they find that their needs have changed or have intensified. Some of the common areas of support often include classroom-based or exam-related accommodations or adjustments, housing-related supports, assistive technology, and software that helps with organization and executive functioning coaches, which pairs really well with the Access Center that Tim was referring to earlier. We also work very closely with our campus partners for solutions and implementation of the approved accommodations. Now, to underline the overall theme of this panel, faculty really do, faculty and student support offices are prioritizing flexibility where possible to create a more inclusive environment. This allows support to be built in and feel more seamless without always requiring a formal disability accommodation, which I think will be a huge asset coming to us.
Thank you so much. You guys offered really a wealth of information and knowledge. And I think just in sharing your answers and your reflections on some of the questions that were submitted ahead of time, I think you've actually hit on a lot of, you've hit on answering a lot of the questions that have appeared in the chat. One question that keeps coming up, and so Ethan, I might ask you to talk a little bit about this. There are a lot of questions in the chat about flexibility around the deadline to go from a grade in a class to SNC. And my sense of the questions is that there may be a misunderstanding that going from a grade to an SNC is really just a switch that's flipped only for the student. But if you could explain a little bit about why we have a deadline around it and what might change for the instructor or for the professor as they're thinking about students who are SNC in a class and why we have a deadline, why it's not just that you can go from pass-fail to SNC or back and forth all through the semester. I think it might help the families to understand why we do have a deadline and why why it's important for us to stick to it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not sure I'll give a totally satisfying answer to everyone in the chat. The deadline, I think we said it's February 18th. I would look it up, but I think it's in the chat as that. And that is pretty hard and fast. I think what we'll do differently this year is really make sure that the students are very much aware of that deadline. Sometimes we do get emails on the 19th, 20th saying I didn't know or I tried. And it's very hard because if a deadline is to mean something, it has to be a deadline. And the reason why it's there and not later is because we want people to make the SNC decision, not just based on what they think their grade might be. SNC is not a substitute for a B or a C on your transcript. Instead, it's your overall approach to that class this semester. And it doesn't necessarily mean whether it's your first of 4 classes or your fourth of 4 classes. It just means that you want to be able to learn in that environment without concern about what the grade is going to be. And I've known some students that have said to me that they really like SNC because if a faculty member says, here's my rubric, and in order to get an A, you need to do this. And if you don't do that, you can do B. And they think, oh, I think I'd rather do what I want and get the B than do what the faculty member wants to get an A. So in other words, it's about the student learning. It's not necessarily about the process through which a faculty member assesses that learning. And one of the things about I mean, eventually they have to assess whether it's a pass or a fail, or at C, but they don't have to worry about the details. And from a faculty's perspective, it's kind of nice too, because we don't then have to worry about discussions about whether this would constitute a B plus or an A minus, which we don't have at Brown. So then there's a big gap between the A and the B. And an unfortunate amount of time is spent with a few students that want to know whether they're going to get the A or the B. So knowing if someone's taking an SNC actually liberates the faculty members as well to concentrate on the learning in the class. So I think it's pretty important to have a deadline, pretty important to acknowledge what the approach is going to be. I understand that for some students, it's frustrating that that comes before the midterm in their class. For others, it comes after their midterm. But again, it's not really about how well you did on the midterm so that you can switch to SNC. It's more about thinking through your approach to how you want to spend time in that class that semester with that topic.
Thank you. I think that perspective is important, and sort of understanding what the goal is. There's a reason why the university has chosen that students can take all of their classes SNC, and it really is to help shape how they learn and how they approach the coursework more than a tool to manipulate a transcript. And I think that is really important.
Exactly.
Gilda, I might ask you this question, although really everyone is probably has a perspective on this. I know as a parent of a college first year, I too have a perspective on this. There are a lot of questions in the chat around flexibility around deadlines. So what happens when students miss deadlines? Can we be more flexible? Can we move deadlines around? I'd love to hear from you all, but I'm picking on you, Gilda, first. Sort of what our hope is for students as we engage with them as stewards of their own education in this critical period of time where they are moving from adolescence to young adulthood, and what it means to help support them in the structures and the deadlines that we know are going to be a part of their lives forever.
Absolutely. So we feel firmly that part of the outcomes of being here at Brown is that you develop competencies. These competencies are personal, academic, professional, and they are what will help carry you into the world after a student leaves Brown. And so part of that is understanding that there are deadlines and planning for those. So we spend a lot of time talking to students about time management, how they go about keeping the information that we give them organized, because I admit we give them lots of information. We have lots of calendars and events and different things that they're keeping track of. And so being mindful of that, how does that individual student organize that information best? And then once we figure that piece out, ensuring that they, like Dean Pollock said, are getting reminders so that they are up to speed on what those deadlines are. And then if they were to miss a deadline, talking to them about what that means, like what are the consequences? And sometimes at first glance, they may seem much more catastrophic than they actually are. And so we have that developmental conversation with them. But certainly their future employers or graduate or professional school are going to implement deadlines for them that they have to uphold. And so we do feel that it's important that they start to kind of prepare for that now and how they organize that information and calendar it. I also think that, as the chair of the Committee on Academic Standing, we again understand that things happen. So if a student were to somehow be incapacitated and not be able to meet a deadline, whether that was hospitalization or a car accident or something unfortunate like that, we would work with them to ensure that they were still able to take advantage of the academic policy, because we don't want those deadlines to be punitive in any way.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful. It can be, I know for myself, and I won't tell the long version of the story, although Ethan knows the story. I had a very long conversation with my own son about a specific deadline related to dropping a class, and he pushed back because he did not want to drop said class. And in the end, he did very well and utilized all of his advising deans and his advising faculty members to make a really, really good decision. And I had to reluctantly admit that he was right, despite the fact that I wanted him to make a very different choice. But I think it is important, even for those of us who should know better, to really encourage our students to engage in these decision-making processes, understanding that there are consequences and that they're going to have to manage those consequences with, of course, the help and the resources that are available at their schools. So I appreciate that. Des, I'm going to ask a question that appeared in the chat, but I want to give you a chance to maybe respond or even opine a little bit more about what is available for accessibility. So I think all of us are anticipating that there might be more requests for accommodations and even more individuals coming to seek out your guidance in the office and the many other people who work with you. Can you share a little bit if there's going to be a significant change in how you're approaching accessibility, or will the sort of the format and the structure look the same, but we'll just be building up capacity to really help support if all of the students if we get a lot more requests this year?
Thank you. Yeah. So, speaking to the latter, we are certainly making sure that we have the resources that we need as a department to handle an influx of requests. And that also might be students that are coming to our office just to confirm or to see if they're eligible for disability accommodations. It may not reach to that level, but we also are there to provide referrals or handoffs to our campus partners like Gilda's team and Tim's team, or student support services as well. So there is, the process will be relatively the same, but as always, we really do rely on a student's self-report to provide the kind of lived experience that they're experiencing. It's not documentation can't tell the entire story, so we really do rely on those conversations with students, get like a big picture of understanding, know what their previous experience is like. Do they have accommodations in high school? Is it something that really started when they got here, starting from? So there really is having this important and compassionate conversation about how to meet them where they are with their disability needs.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. A real enormous thank you to all of the panelists for sharing your expertise and your perspectives on how best to support students with this specific focus on helping them to be successful academically. Of course, we all know the academic piece and the student support piece and the safety piece, they all really work very closely together to make sure that our students are successful. But I hope our parents and families have appreciated hearing their perspectives of all of the different voices across campus that really work together very carefully and closely to make sure that the student experience is optimal and that we're really preparing our students for success. As we close today, I want to return briefly to something that has been at the heart of both our conversations this week: care for students as whole people. We know that the effects of trauma don't always show up right away. Some students may feel ready to re-engage quickly. Others may find that emotions surface weeks into the semester. Brown has expanded mental health and well-being support to meet students wherever they are, now and throughout the months ahead. That includes additional clinical and community-based mental health care, no-cost therapy options both on and off campus, and a visible online presence of staff and clinicians offering spaces to pause, connect, and be in community. Just as important, faculty and staff across the university are receiving additional training in trauma-informed engagement and how to direct students to appropriate sources of clinical care. So students are surrounded by adults who know how to notice when something feels off and how to respond with care. Support is not limited to the first few weeks of the semester. It will be there whenever the students need it. We also recognize the importance of collective healing. Many students were displaced, and many have not yet had the chance to process what happened together. Campus Life is continuing to explore opportunities for shared reflection, remembrance, and connection, and we will share more as those plans take shape. Healing is not a single moment, it's a process that we will move through together. I do want to emphasize one thing. Brown is still Brown. It's a place of care, curiosity, connection, and resilience. As students return, they will find familiar routines, familiar faces, and a community that is ready to welcome them back with intention and compassion. To parents and families, thank you. You are essential partners in this work. You know your students best, and your care, conversations, and instincts matter. We encourage you to continue staying connected, to reach out when you have concerns, and to trust that we are here listening and responding alongside you. If you'd like more detail on security and campus readiness, Tuesday's webinar recording is available, and we encourage you to explore the university and Campus Life websites for additional resources. And we will follow up next week with a comprehensive FAQ drawing from both webinars. Additional updates will continue to come from the university as we move forward. My hope is that you leave today feeling informed, reassured, and confident that your students are returning to a campus that is prepared, caring, and committed to their thriving. We've got this, and we'll continue doing this work together. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your trust.